Welcome to class. We are going to talk about some very important issues in the process of interview and placement. So, your entire effort for years in preparing and studying, getting a degree, culminates into a job interview. You go for a job and you are subjected to a structured interview. So, today we'll talk about what skills are required to get placed after interviews. What skills are required to impress a panel of selectors who interview you? Uh, Let me tell you, communication is an art. So there is no shortcut, and I cannot suggest you rule number one, two, three, four, which will help you in interviews. But there are certain things we need to pay attention to. At the same time, we need to understand that interviews that we face during job interviews during selections are all impressionistic. So you need to create a lasting impression, right, to be registered in the clutter. Because mind you, when you go for an interview, you have a lot of competitions and a lot of people are there. Your competitors, your rivals are there, your peers are there. And more or less broadly, they contain similar level of knowledge, right? And everyone answers those questions in the interview fairly similar way. But what makes the difference? Why certain answers are registered? Certain candidates are registered. Certain candidates impress the panel and get a place. So there is no golden rule for that. I repeat, but we need to evolve as an effective communicator. We need to work on our linguistic skills. We need to work on our communicative skills. We need to work on our overall impression and image. Apart from the technical degree that you have, apart from the grades and distinctions you have. So let us talk about interview skills. What skills are required and what skills we need to focus on. Now, there are certain challenges we all face before going for a job interview. Anxiety, of course, is the biggest thing, and anxiety of all kinds, imagined fears, anxieties, apprehensions. This anxiety leads to nervousness. So, if you are very anxious before the interview, when you enter the room, you will feel nervous, right? Uh, you become overcautious that, I should not make a mistake. The fear of mistake makes you overcautious and leads you to hypercorrection. And part of this problem is lack of preparation for the interview at both the levels. At personal levels, as a person, so there is a problem in your grooming. At the level of awareness about the organization you are going to be interviewed by, and also uh, the technical knowledge which is required for the job profile. Are you prepared for that or not? So, preparation of all kinds, when we lack the confidence. When we lack the control over content, it's a challenge to us. It's problematic. And then, because of all these trailing problems, connected problems, our communication strategy, our interactive skills, you know, lack of interactive skills lead to uh, all kinds of anxiety and improper body language. Your confidence is shaken, and your body language reflects that lack of confidence, nervousness. You know, your body language reflects that. Your eye contact, for that matter, your tone, for that matter. Paralinguistic items like tone, pitch, rhythm. Your voice becomes shaky. Your body language, your reflexes become inappropriate. Uh, and because you don't have control on the content of the interview, you resort to lots of distractions. So you are being asked something else, you are answering something else, you are not straightforward, you are not hitting the bullseye. So these are the problems that we all have, and believe me, it can happen at any stage. So it's not only freshers, problem of the freshers, but the established people in the field, if they are not prepared, they will face these challenges and they have to overcome these challenges. So this is not unusual, this is quite normal and natural. But the challenges are not as big that you cannot surmount and control them. You can control them, you can bring them in your control, you can be confident, you can be prepared, you can be confident, you can show control over the content, right? You can be pleasing and register yourself in the memory of those panel members who are there for you to select. Now, there are three stages of an interview. Few things which are required before the interview happens. We call it pre-interview preparations. Then there are certain things we have to keep in mind, and which is while interview situation. And finally, the third stage is post interview, where we do a lot of follow up activities. So, we'll talk about all these three stages of interview: pre interview, while interview, and post interview, by and by, one after the other. So, we'll talk about pre interview first. So, there are certain things we have to keep in mind while preparing for an interview, right? First and foremost, you have to be mentally oriented towards interview. If you look at the format of the interview, oral interview, I mean, these days because of pandemic, we have telephonic interviews, uh, which makes our life easy, but also poses another set of challenges. We'll not talk about that. Let us imagine a normal, formal oral interview. So, as a fresher, uh, you do not possess any experience of job, right? And you are a fresher going for interview for the first time. We all believe that if I speak too much, there are certain myths associated with interview. That if we speak fluently, if we speak at a high rate, if the delivery of per word, per minute words are high, if I speak in louder voice, if I speak, uh, you know, with with smile on the face, so all kinds of myths are there, right? Uh, First and foremost, relax. You don't have to act like some other person. Be your usual self. This is the first thing. Don't panic. Don't overdo anything. You have to be just what you are. You have to believe in what you are. First and foremost, you have to believe in yourself. That generates a lot of confidence. Be what you are. You don't have to try and be someone else. You know, you might have seen people, in formal domain do a lot of acting. Acting is not advisable for interview. You have to be relaxed, composed, poised, and confident. And that comes from the belief in your efficacy. The efficacy, the belief that you can do it. right? So you don't have to act like another person. Be what you are. But you need to prepare beforehand certain things like research about the organization which is going to interview you. You have applied for and you are going to be interviewed. Because the familiarity with the organization will help you imagine and practice some predictable questions. Your understanding of the organization, information about the organization also prepares you better to respond effectively. It also orients you towards the nature and culture of the organization. You can imagine the people from the organization. What kind of people you are going to find, right? The functions, right? Uh, as an icebreaker in the first phase of the interview, sometimes interviewers have this idea of talking in general, talking about you and talking about your knowledge of the organization. So you have to do a thorough research about the organization you have applied and going to be interviewed by. Then you have to imagine certain predictable questions. See, always remember, uh, though interview doesn't follow any strict structure, but by and large, all such interviews are structured conventionally. And if you look at the stages inside during that interview, inside the room, you find a set of questions, few questions which work as icebreaker. So they ask you general questions about, tell me about yourself. This is a very predictable question. Introduce yourself. It's a very predictable question, right? Uh, explain yourself as a person. So the wordings can be anything, but you have to talk about yourself. You have to talk about your academic background, sometimes family background. So these are standard questions and you don't need any extra preparation for that. Only thing is that you need to prioritize and sequence the information you are going to give for these questions. So when you are asked for your academic background, what are the things that you are going to highlight? What are the things that you are going to talk about? And you are free, right? So you have to focus on the positive aspects of your academic background, and also, you know, you have to prompt them to ask, you know, diverse questions on your background. So you have to give them information, interesting information. So you have to do the packaging. So you have to package yourself as a product and market yourself. So you might have seen this marketing skills where we talk about the quality of the product, value of the product. So you as a person and your academic background, your family background, right? But do the packaging well. You have to prepare for certain predictable answers. Then they may talk about your hobbies. Predictable question, very universal predictable question, right? If you have some achievements in your career, in your academic background, then talk about it. Highlight that, right? So this is what I mean by packaging. You have to package yourself in such a way that more interesting things and salient achievements of your career must be highlighted and recorded. That prompts them to ask more about it, right? So you have to just trigger certain ideas and they will ask more questions about it. So do the packaging well. Then they move to the core academic questions, technical round. So the second stage after the ice breaking, they move to technical round where they ask about your knowledge, your awareness, your training, your exposure, summer training if you have done. So all these questions. So they check and the test, they evaluate your technical understanding of the profile for the job you are doing. Then the third stage of the interview moves into testing, evaluating, or examining your adaptability. So you as a person, right? Uh, how flexible you are. Questions like, you have applied for a position in Chennai or in Delhi. What if we post you at Pune or some other location? It, it is just to check whether you're open to such unimagined, unexpected challenges or not. They test you as a team worker. So they will frame questions in such a way that it reflects you as a team worker. So you have to prove that you are going to be an asset to the organization if you are hired because of your professional commitment, because of your hard work, because of your curiosity and to learn new things, because you are not scared of challenges and you are ready to take challenges. So these skills are tested in the third place. When your technical thing is over, they are satisfied, they will move to the third part of the interview. And the fourth part is conclusion, wrapping up, closing the interview. So they will ask questions about your preferences of the profile, types of job you're expecting, the place you want to be placed, maybe, the salary component will be discussed. So broadly, you can guess there are certain questions very predictable. But the problem is that even if we can guess certain questions, we don't do practice. So what you have to do, you have to anticipate, imagine, and note down some predictable, generic, universal questions in your field of expertise. You as a professional and you as a person in your personal round, and finally your expectations from this job. So your salary, your position, your posting, so all these things. This is the broad content of an oral interview for a job, and we all know it, but we don't prepare. So preparation is very important before the interview, right? Be in control means, once you are prepared and once you have packaged yourself, you have revised your answers of those imagined predictable questions, you feel confident. Make notes and also evaluate your own answers that you are preparing, right? uh, you have to develop control over the content. And always remember, nobody is interested to ask you theories. The questions that they frame in job interviews are more of application oriented. So the theories that you have learned, the concepts that you have learned, how they can be applied in the real world situation, how your classroom learning prepares you for your better performance in the industry that you have to work on. So you have to work on the content. At the same time, you have to look at the applicational aspect of it. How you are going to apply this knowledge, right? How this concept is applied. So you have to be aware and train yourself accordingly. Then work on your grooming. Little work on your grooming. The way you appear, your dress, right? The way you appear, some soft skills, right? Some body language you have to work on. In majority of the cases, with my own experience, what we feel that the interviewee becomes in the room unnecessarily becomes stiff. The body language is very stiff. You try to be very formal. Body language is very stiff. You are stressed. Body reflexes are not natural and normal. And this tension creates a lot of distraction and a lot of problem, stammering, uh, you know or certain other problems. Be in control, right? And don't be scared of being rejected. You're going there for selection. So rejection should not be a point of thinking in the mind. Do your best and believe that you can do justice to the job offered. With this belief, you enter the room, work on your grooming. The dressing should be appropriate to the occasion. Usually, we have formal dress, but the color combination should be in contrast. And usually, light colored shirt with dark pant, right? Formal shoes, and you should look well groomed person, a cheerful person to work with, right? You should focus on positivity, right? And finally, arrange your papers and testimonials very meticulously, because you may be asked to show any of the testimonials. So whatever you have mentioned in your application and whatever you have mentioned in your CV resume, please make sure that you carry all these testimonials in a folder with you. Then we move to while interview, the second phase of the entire process. So you are actually into the interview room. You are actually facing the interview panel. And there the actual performance happens. So pre-interview is preparation before the performance. While interview is the actual act of performance. You have to perform there. So you have to make sure that you leave a good impression during your interview, right? And how can you do that? You need to speak intelligibly, speaking fluently, speaking confidently. You paraphrase. If you're not able to understand, paraphrase it. If you feel that your interviewer is not able to understand you, you paraphrase it. You explain it in an alternative manner. Ask for clarifications if you don't get the question right. There are certain linguistic skills we have to keep in mind. We'll shortly talk about it. We'll shortly talk about interactive skills. There are certain communication strategies we have to follow. We have to develop promptness in our responses, right? And arguments must be logical. So, with your tone, with your register, with your appearance, and with your positivity, you can leave a very impressive and deep impact on your interviewers. Post interview, there are certain things that we need to follow up, right? You may be asked to complete certain other formalities in terms of documentation and testimonials, or possibly you may be asked to come for another round of interview. So you have to keep an eye and take a note of whatever development happens inside the interview. You may be asked to wait for some time and you may be asked for another round of discussion. So you have to follow it up. So once you get out of the room, your interview is not over yet until you are officially told to leave. So wait for that set of instructions and comply with the instructions you are given. So this is the structure of an interview, and these are the three stages. So we are talking about linguistic skills. Linguistic skills involve accuracy of vocabulary. So proper selection of words in your sentences, in your expressions. Grammatical errors spoil the whole mood, right? Because they also reflect your competence in the language. Pronunciation, you don't have to sound like a Britisher or an American. You sound like the way you are, natural, neutral accent. You don't have to act, you don't have to try, just be whatever you are. but tempo must be appropriate. Don't hurry, don't rush to answer. Relax and wait, and formulate your ideas and answer. But your pronunciation must be intelligible. The pronunciation should not create confusion and misunderstanding of the meaning of it. Then you should work on to develop your ability to handle a range of topics. Always remember, in interviews, they don't ask you straight theories, right, or straight questions. They give you a context, they give you a perspective about certain technical idea and ask you to respond to it. So you have to develop this art of communication, interaction, explaining things, and multiple alternatives. So you have to work on that, how to paraphrase, how to explain a range of contexts they create. You have to be able to understand the context and respond to that quickly. And also, we need to avoid any kind of stereotype, any remark that represents a stereotype, any remark that talks about, tells them about your bias. So all kinds of biases, all kinds of stereotypes, right, preferences. You should not show that you have strong likings and dislikings. It has to be tamed, and you need to sound balanced. You need to sound neutral. Any kind of such signal and hint of your bias forces them to probe further, and they keep on asking further questions, and you are trapped. So make sure that you do not make any categorical remark and answer. And finally, cohesion of ideas. So the ideas expressed in your answers must be cohesive, connected, and related. We cannot afford to have disjoint ideas from our wild imaginations. They have to be grounded in a context. They have to be grounded in a situation which is appropriate and required for the moment. Then we have certain interactive skills, and that is not a one day thing. You have to practice. It comes to you gradually. Work on your fluency. Speak at a natural speed. You shouldn't be speaking too fast. At the same time, you shouldn't be speaking too slow. In both the cases, it is problematic. So you have to practice and develop the rate of your speech at a neutral speed. Then link the ideas, do the paraphrasing, come up with alternative explanation. If you feel that your interviewer is not able to understand you, explain it again in a few, different words, different expressions. So paraphrasing, right? You have to substantiate your answer with appropriate examples, and you may be given a chance to ask questions at the end of the interview. Don't lose that moment, and be prepared to ask questions, appropriate questions. You can't ask questions like, am I selected? Can you tell me whether I'm selected? Can you tell me whether I performed better? Such questions are cliche questions. Don't show your desperate desire to know answers, but ask relevant questions which talks about your keen observation and your professional skills. So questions about the profile, job profile, questions about your roadmap, of your possibilities in the organization, questions about organization itself. So you have to be ready with 2-3 questions in advance. When you are given a chance, you can ask your question and they would answer you. And finally, we have certain communication strategies, right? First and foremost, the moment you enter the room, you have to be very polite, pleasant, and greet everyone. The opening of your answer should be pleasing one, and it should begin with a positive note, right? Try to avoid criticizing any individual, be your teacher, be your older employer, or anyone. Don't do any bad mouthing about things. Don't show your strong opinion about things, right? Holding the floor means with your prompt answers, with your appropriate answers, you are in control and the interview goes in the desired direction, right? Paraphrasing, we have been discussing. Clarify if you don't understand any question, or ask for clarification if they don't understand any question, any answer that you have given. Paraphrase it, right? Body language should be appropriate in the sense that you shouldn't look like, shaky. You shouldn't uh, be tapping your finger while answering, swinging your legs while answering, sweating unnecessarily, right? Being anxious, and your anxiety should not be reflected, right? Your body reflection should be normal and relaxed, posture should be normal and relaxed, and that bears upon the overall confidence and performance, that has bearing upon it. And interpreting the feedback appropriately. You might be answering some question, and meanwhile another panel member gives a perspective or a feedback or a remark. Don't jump to that. First you evaluate it, complete your sentence, and then address the person. So you shouldn't look like in a hurry to finish everything within no time, right? Now, after looking at all these things, we realize that preparing for an interview is not a short term, uh, you know, shortcut way. It, it requires a lot of preparation much before the interview happens. And from today, you can start working on your language, you can start working on your pronunciation, you can start working on your grooming, you can start developing the wide range of understanding of the topics. You can develop understanding wide range of themes and contexts. You can work on applying your knowledge, acquired knowledge, into real life practices and other professional skills. It's a gradual process. You have to work on that, and with that, I believe that if you work on all these aspects and skills, you'll be better prepared for interviews. And we'll try to bring you a real live interview in some of our videos very soon. So take care and work hard, focus on these things, and we'll meet in some other class with some more details. Thank you very much.